Free speech. Let's talk about it. Today on the Half of This Show.
Is this camera on me?
So today on the Half of This Show, we are going to cover the difference between free speech and expressive conduct. The language of the Constitution of the United States says that Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech, as well as many other privileges that are afforded under the larger umbrella of the First Amendment. But today, in this series, we're going to cover free speech. So just what is free speech? Free speech is any word that is uttered or any action that expresses a message and has the intent to convey such message.
Yes, sir.
An important thing to remember with free speech is that not all expressive conduct is speech. Me sitting here silently, just looking at the camera, not saying anything, is not considered speech. However, if I sit silently in the middle of the street during a protest against, say, like police brutality, that is expressive conduct. So when the privilege of free speech was created, there were three philosophies that were considered when handling it. You have the absolutionist, which says that anything you say or do is free speech and it should be protected. You can say whatever you want to say. The second one is the categorical, where there are types of speech, groups of speech, and the degree of protection is weighted upon how it is valued in society. For example, political speech has the highest degree of protection under freedom of speech. When they were creating the Constitution, they wanted to receive feedback from opposition, from opposing parties. So political speech has the highest degree of protection. An example of the other level, like the lower spectrum of free speech, would be like pornography and other art forms that aren't widely accepted by the general population. It's not that valued in society. However, it is still considered free speech, but it's not as heavily protected as political speech. You can damn near say anything political and it will be protected, but there are certain types of pornography that are not covered. The last category of free speech philosophies is the balancing. So the balancing wants to keep the individual rights of United States citizens and the government interests on two sides of a scale. So our right to free speech and our right to voice our opinions, expressions, what have you, versus the government interests. If what we're saying is too wild, that it disrupts order, the government can restrict it. And that is pretty much the modern philosophy with balancing our right to free speech. You want to keep the right of the people at a high level, but you also have to retain some sense of order and unity. And that's what they use to restrict our right to free speech. Now I'm going to play y'all a little bit of a clip here just to demonstrate just how lenient the government is when it comes to your right to free speech. Listen to this clip. This is in Fairfax, by the way. So, y'all liberal Nova people, y'all are not above critique. Y'all are not above having racists in your area. Check your friends and family. This is also a George Mason graduate.
Ain't got no fucking law underneath of you. I can say whatever the fuck I want. First Amendment. Bye! Go to your own fucking country. Go to your own country. Go to your own country, dreamer.
Wouldn't let that shit happen to me, though.
Now, Henry's not entirely incorrect here. He does have a right to free speech, but with free speech, there comes a cost. So if you get your ass whooped, Henry, that's on you, bruv. So I'm going to give you guys an example of just how the government restricts it. But before I do that, I need to break down the types of restrictions that they use. So the first one you have is content neutral, and the second one you have is content based. A content neutral restriction restricts the places that you say it, what time you say things, how much of a certain type of speech that you can express. For example, you can wear whatever t-shirt you want as long as the profane words are censored, or you can have a public speech at this part of the city at this time. These are examples of content neutral. They're not restricting what you're saying, but they're restricting how you present that information and exactly where and when. They can limit it as much as they want. That is within the city, state, and the country's power to limit people's ability to speak in certain places, as long as they have a government interest to back it. A content-based restriction would be something like the classes of unprotected speech. For example, like fighting words or true threats. If I say I'm gonna beat your ass and somebody beats my ass in return, they're not going to get in trouble because I instigated that, and I would actually get in trouble for doing that. And that is an example of a content-based restriction. The government has that right. However, with content-based restrictions, they do have to meet a higher degree of scrutiny. Ideas such that are like so widely rejected across the board by everybody that we don't want people saying them. They have no merit or value within the marketplace of ideas. We'll talk about that at a later point in time. So the $1 million question today is, can I say whatever I want to say? The short answer is no. You cannot say whatever you want to say. The reason being is because the government can restrict just what you want to say to an extent. The long answer is, however, yes, you can say whatever you want to say. However, if what you're saying is too wild, like I said before, the government can restrict it. So along with the $1 million question comes the $1 million misconception. And that is that the government cannot restrict any of your constitutional rights. For those of you who believe that, you're wrong, and I'm here to tell you why today. The government can restrict any and all of your constitutional rights if they have a substantial government interest to do so. We will do another video on the levels of scrutiny that the government needs to meet in order to restrict such rights. But just know that if they have a means and a method, they can and will restrict your constitutional rights. We've seen it before, and we're seeing it now. So what did we cover today? We went over the difference between free speech and expressive conduct, why they're not one and the same, and also why the government can restrict them. We also talked about how the government restricts our constitutional rights, but specifically how they restrict our right to free speech. This is going to be a series on our First Amendment privileges. I'm going to do a few of them, but for this series, we're going to talk about our right to free speech. We might have 2 or 3 more episodes talking about unprotected speech, the marketplace of ideas, and we'll go deep into how the government restricts it in the next few episodes. So stay tuned for that. As always, this has been the Half a Day Show, bringing you education, entertainment, and everything in between. See y'all next week.